What if I told you that four guys who wrote pretty basic songs will become one of the biggest rock bands of all time? And what if I told you they did it by understanding something about rock music that almost every other band missed for years? Today, we're breaking down Kiss and what they knew that most bands did not know. Let's be honest about Kiss's musical abilities. I don't think anyone would put Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, or Peter Criss in the top 25 greatest musicians of all time. Ace Frehley was a solidly guitar player, but he definitely wasn't an Eddie Van Halen or an Eric Clapton. Peter Criss was a very competent drummer, but he wasn't exactly John Bonham or Neil Peart. Gene Simmons was a basic bass player who could sing, who had great personality, maybe a better businessman than musician. And Paul Stanley, who was a solid, decent rhythm guitar player who could sing. Compare their technical skills to their contemporaries in 1973 to 1975. Led Zeppelin was dominating with Houses of the Holy and Physical Graffiti. Pink Floyd had released Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here. The Who had Quadrophenia. Deep Purple was at their peak. Newcomers Aerosmith and Bad Company had emerged onto the scene. Elton John was selling millions of records. Yes and King Crimson were pushing musical boundaries, and these were considered musicians with massive commercial success. And Kiss? They wrote catchy, simple songs with basic chord progressions, straightforward rock and roll. But here's the thing, they understood something those virtuosos did not. While Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd stood mostly still and let their music do the talking, Kiss understood that kids wanted to be entertained, not just impressed. They weren't selling music, they were selling an experience. The one thing they knew the others didn't is that people hear music with their eyes. So they decided to be characters, not just wear costumes. Become the demon, the star child, the spaceman, the catman. Every member gets a persona, a look, a brand. But it wasn't just the makeup. It was the understanding that rock concerts could be movies. Fire breathing, blood spitting, smoking guitars, explosions, rising drum kits. They turned every show into a superhero movie where the audience was part of a story and an experience. If you look at the evolution of rock concerts, it took years for other bands to catch on. Look what the major rock acts were doing in the mid-70s while Kiss was filling arenas. In 1975 and 76, most rock bands just stood still and played their songs. Minimal stage productions, maybe a few lights. Pink Floyd was starting to experiment with an elaborate staging for the wall, but that wasn't until 1979. They became the masters of lighting as theater, using visuals to compensate for Roger Waters and David Gilmour's limited stage presence. And Rush, brilliant musicians, but Geddy Lee wasn't exactly a charismatic frontman. They learned to use complex lighting rigs as well, and later video screens to create visual interest when the band stayed relatively still on stage. The same went for Yes and King Crimson. Iron Maiden didn't introduce Eddie as the mascot until 1980. Then they built their entire visual identity around it. Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, Poison, really the whole 80s metal rock scene basically took the Kiss formula and ran with it. Kiss understood something fundamental that most musicians missed. People hear music with their eyes, not just their ears. While other bands focused on getting the perfect guitar tone or the tightest rhythm section, Kiss realized that what people want to see affects what they're hearing. The same three-chord song hits differently when there's fire shooting from the stage or a 7-foot demon spitting blood. Your brain tells you it's more powerful, more dangerous, more exciting. But here's another key insight. Kiss proved you can manufacture charisma through visual elements and costumes. None of them were natural showmen like Freddie Mercury, but put them in that makeup, give them their personas, add pyrotechnics. Suddenly, Paul Stanley becomes the star child commanding the stage. Gene Simmons transforms from the awkward bass player into the demon. Ace Frehley becomes a spaceman with his guitars smoking. The costumes and characters did a lot of the heavy lifting for them. This opened the door for bands who understood they could use lighting, staging, and visual effects to compensate for what they lacked in natural magnetism. Today, this is just normal. Every major rock and roll act understands that you need visual identity, stage production, memorable moments, social media-worthy spectacles. Kiss laid the groundwork for every live performance that came after them. Were they great entertainers? Absolutely. They understood their audience better than any band with 10 times their musical ability. They proved that in rock and roll, sometimes knowing what the people want is more important than technical prowess live. If you like the content in this video, we invite you to join us, the I Love Music Army, our internet musical global family of friends where I read every single comment, and I'm excited and can't wait to read what you have to say about this video. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, keep the music playing and the good times rolling.